Hi everyone, I'm Diana Ransom, Features Editor here at Inc., and I'm pleased to welcome you all today to Startup Bootcamp live chat with a good friend, Simon Sinek.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
He's an ethnographer by training. He's an adjunct at the RAND Corporation, and he also consults with organizations of all sizes from startups to the military. And to top it off, he's also delivered the third most viewed TED Talk to date. Since it makes sense to start with why, your book, let's go ahead and take it from there. What is basically, can you speak about the importance of knowing why you do what you do rather than what you do?
Sure. Every organization on the planet knows what they do. Some know how they do it, but very few understand why. And at the end of the day, every single organization, even our own career, always functions on these same three levels. It's a biological constant. It's just how our brains take in information and we make decisions. And so you have to know all three. But the problem is most organizations don't know why. And what I've learned and spoken about and written about is that those few organizations, those few CEOs who truly understand why their company exists, and this has nothing to do with making money, that's a result, but literally why do we need their company to exist? Because you can buy whatever they sell somewhere else usually. Those are the companies that tend to last longer and outperform their competition.
When an organization or when a company is just starting, how do they define why they do what they do?
Well, why at its core is an origin story. The best companies are ones where the founder or a small group of founders personally suffered, or someone close to them suffered something. They couldn't get something, or they had to overcome something. They couldn't find another market, and so they produced it themselves. The weakest companies are the ones where somebody reads a magazine, sees a market opportunity, and attempts to, build a business around it. And the reason is simple. It's because there's no passion for something that we perceive a market opportunity around. But when we personally suffer something, or somebody around us personally suffers something, or we can't get something, this is the source of passion. And so the ability to put that story into words, the ability to truly understand why this has to exist on a very human level that goes way beyond the product or the service, is what keeps the inspiration alive as the company continues to grow.
It's interesting. Tony Hsieh has often sort of been quoted as saying how he isn't necessarily passionate about what he does or what he sells or what Zappos sells. It's more or less he's passionate about customer service. Mm-hmm. So it strikes me as there are different aspects of business that people can be passionate about. How do you suggest finding that passion?
So our passion comes from who we are, not necessarily what we sell. It's true, Tony doesn't necessarily care about shoes. What he cares about is human beings. What he cares about is his employees, and he cares that his employees take care of his customers. And that's how it works. He's really obsessed with having a good time, delivering happiness, as he calls it. And what he sells is incidental. He could have sold anything. And so our why comes from, like I said, who we are, how we're raised. It's the sum total of our experiences when we were kids, and our whys are fully formed by the time we're 18, 19, 20, and the rest of our careers simply offer us opportunities to bring our cause to life, to bring that purpose or cause to life. And when we do something that is consistent with what we believe, we feel passion. When we have to work hard for something we don't believe in, it's called stress. You work just as hard, if not harder, when you're passionate than you are when you're stressed. The difference is one of them, it feels good, and the other one, it doesn't. So if you look at great organizations, whether it's Apple or Virgin, every company that Virgin's ever started is Richard Branson. His personality as a human being is the personality of the companies. His beliefs, his values are imbued into the organization. In other words, they're the same thing. His companies are one of the things that he's done in his life to bring who he is to life. We know this is the case in small companies, but it doesn't change when those companies get big.
So you talked about Apple. You also mentioned Martin Luther King often in your speeches and in your book. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you can kind of talk about why this organization, Apple, and why this person, Martin Luther King, was so successful. Because it strikes me as maybe it's just a matter of good marketing.
Remember, civil rights problems existed long before Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. Long before Martin Luther King. I mean, what happened to the whole beginning of the 20th century? There were issues, and there was strife, and there was uprising, but how come there was no civil rights movement? And what it did is it took a person to put the cause into words beyond what they wanted, beyond how to do it, into words so compelling we understood why we had to do it. It was deeply, deeply human. It was about all men are created equal. It goes back to the very founding values of the United States, and it resonated, and it brought people together because we can disagree on how to do it. but we can't. But what we find alignment on is why we're doing it in the first place.
So what can companies and entrepreneurs take away from that experience?
The CEO's responsibility is to preach the cause, not just sell the product, but so that all of the people who work who join the company understand that they're joining somewhat of a social movement. Steve Jobs was really good at this. I mean, the people who worked there really thought they were going to change the world, and they still do.
And they did.
And they did. And that was a credit to Jobs preaching the cause and preaching the cause. And if you go back to the origin story of Apple, here was this new technology called the personal computer. And Jobs was a populist. He believed in power to the people. And he believed that this technology could really empower a human being to stand up to a corporation. And that would never happen unless they made it simple to use. So it wasn't just about simplicity and design, it was about giving power to people. And if you've noticed, since the dawn of Apple to this current day, they only have individuals in their advertising. One person rising up, that old 1984 commercial of one person running into this Orwellian scene. It's one person dancing with an iPod. It's I'm a Mac, I'm a PC. It's really about the individual and about empowerment. Had Apple started in the 90s, it would have been a dot-com. It would have been an online. It just happened to be the technology of the day. It had nothing to do with the technology. It had to do with his own personal beliefs, and the technology was simply a means to an end. And this is what gave them the power to diversify their portfolio as well, which is it was never about the product in the first place. It was always about the people.
So it sounds like it would be rather hard, from the way you kind of put it, to learn entrepreneurship or to learn how to be a leader.
Leadership is a skill. Leadership is a practicable skill. And it's rarely taught, unfortunately. And when it is taught, it's not taught well. Most of the MBA programs don't really teach leadership. They call it leadership, but they teach management. Leadership is this really, really sort of sophisticated change in mindset. When we're very junior, the only thing we have to do is be good at our jobs. And they teach us how to use the software or use the technology so that we can get good at our jobs. They give us training. Some people get advanced degrees in how to do the job, accounting or whatever, And if you're really good at your job, they'll promote you. And eventually you'll get promoted to a position where you're now responsible for people who do the job you used to do. But nobody teaches us how to do that. Mm-hmm. And this is why we get managers, is because the people who are now put in charge of us are actually better at the job than we are. That's what got them promoted, and they can't help themselves. And so we have to go through this transition. Some people make it slowly, some people make it quickly, and unfortunately, without training, some people will never make it. We have to go through this transition where we are no longer responsible for the results. We now become responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. We're no longer responsible for taking care of the customer. We're now responsible for the people who are taking care of the customer. This is what leadership is. And it's a practicable skill, and it's the same thing as becoming a parent. Your lifestyle will change, and now everything is centered around taking care of another human being. That's what leadership is. Entrepreneurship is different. I've had these discussions and debates with people whether you can teach entrepreneurship. There's a huge difference between being an entrepreneur and being a small business owner. Not all small business owners are entrepreneurs, and some entrepreneurs own huge businesses. Richard Branson's an entrepreneur. He owns 300 companies worth multiple billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. He's an entrepreneur. So let us not confuse small business owner and entrepreneur. A small business owner owns a small business. An entrepreneur is a problem solver. It's the way they see the world. They see the world differently. And I would debate whether we can teach that. I think we can teach some of the skills of building a small business, but the jury's still out for me whether we can teach entrepreneurship.
Uh-oh. I'm sure all the MBA programs across the country are going to love that one. Okay, so let's skip ahead to your next book, your latest book, Leaders Eat Last.